Hey there, welcome. It is so good to have you with me today. I appreciate you making the time to be here. I don't know what it's like where you live, but spring looks like it's trying to start here today. And, there's lots of other things that we could all be doing with the weather turning so beautiful. So I'm glad you're here and I'm glad you prioritized this time to be with me. For anyone who watches this on the replay, and for those of you who are with me live, if you want to watch the replay, you will receive the link tomorrow. Just encouraging you to please like the video when you watch it and drop a comment, maybe share it, subscribe to my channel, all that good stuff. It helps to make the videos much more visible to a wider audience. So I'd appreciate your help with that if you wouldn't mind. Today we are talking about the neurogenic structural subtype. But before we do that, I would like to just introduce myself just a little bit here, just in case you're pretty new to me. My name is Judith Kopp, and I've been involved with holistic healing since about 1980. I started studying in 1979 and started doing clinical work in 1981. So I've been at this for a little while, just a little while, right? I've studied under 8 different iridology instructors and several different herbal instructors and several different nutrition instructors. So I haven't stayed focused with just one instructor because I love gathering the information and sifting through it, proving it in my clinic and deciding what works and what doesn't, right? So I am an IPA level 3 certified instructor. Last I checked a few days ago, there were only 10 level 3 instructors in the world. And IPA's just started giving these badges a few years ago. So that's why we've only got a few up there. I was also chosen as the instructor of the year with IPA in 2022. And in their most recent symposium just a few weeks ago, I was awarded the Iridologist of the Year for 2024. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm not even sure what I did to earn this, but I'm just going to keep doing what I've always done because I think it's a good thing, right? So again, welcome. I got into holistic healing because I had some health problems. And the medical world didn't seem to have any answers, at least none that were useful. And that's when I started looking for other answers. I was raised in a very medical-minded home. If the doctor said to do something, you did it, right? There was no questioning the doctor's opinion. And I mean, we did have a good family doctor at the outset. Now it's really hard to find a doctor up here. There's such a shortage of them. Over the many years that I've been involved with holistic healing, I've been doing clinical work all along, but I've also designed and taught many different courses and written usually textbooks to go with them. So textbooks like Pregnancy Naturally, the Herbal Birth Kit Handbook, Healthy Kids Naturally, Biokinesiology and Color Therapy Level 1 and 2, The Essential Guide to Nature's Sunshine Products, and the Dynamic Iridology textbook. Now, most of those books are out of print. They need to be rewritten. They're sorely out of date. And the Dynamic Iridology textbook is digital only, and it's only available to students in my class, in my course, right? So that's kind of me. That's kind of me. I've got 7 kids. They're all grown and gone. Well, one of them and her husband are still living with us, and 10 grandkids. And so we've got a busy family life with this. But I do love teaching iridology and working with it. I'm also a master herbalist and a natural nutrition clinical practitioner. These are the different professional associations I am affiliated with. I'm just going to plan to seed right here, right now, that the next cohort of dynamic iridology will be starting in September. So if you're looking for an iridology course, I am going to say, just start gearing up to be ready to join me in September. We've just started a cohort. And if any of you are really keen and you're thinking, oh, darn, I just missed a start, we've only had 2 lessons so far, 2 classes. And so if you're good with spending some time catching up, you could still come in. I've had students join as late as the 3rd class. So if that's of interest to you, reach out to me and we'll have a little conversation and see if we can get you in. One of the things we need to remember with the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course is that you do need to have a college level anatomy and physiology course already under your belt. Whether you're maybe a registered nurse or a massage therapist or a physical therapist, or maybe you've had to do a separate anatomy and physiology course as a part of your herbal training, Any of those will count as long as you can either are licensed, like a licensed RN, or you've got a transcript that shows A and P as a separate course with a grade over 80%. Now that is a prerequisite that I have, because when you've got that, we can go so much deeper with iridology than we can if you don't have it. And it's also a prerequisite for certification with the International Iridology Practitioners Association. All righty. So this is one of my graduates. I asked Anita, why did you take my course? And she said it was recommended to her by Robert Rogers. If you look up Robert Rogers as a herbalist, he's written, I don't know how many books. He is a prolific writer when it comes to herbalism. And Anita went on to say, the way the class is laid out and taught, I've retained significantly more than I have in other classes I've taken. I now use iridology in my herbal clinical work and appreciate the extra insight it gives me regarding my clients' needs, and they really love it. That is so good. All right, let's dive into the neurogenic eye. All right. So, just let me grab my notes. One should have notes to speak from, correct? Especially if you want to do things in the right order so it makes sense for your students. Always have an outline. That would be my motto. Always have an outline. All right, so let me just grab my notes here. And this would be in this module. So this is actually taken directly from the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course, right? So I'm giving you a sneak peek behind the curtains here. So when we look at the neurogenic iris, now just before we do this, how many of you have some iridology under your belt already? How many of you have had any training in this? Just drop it in the chat box. I think I've set that up so everyone can chat. Yes, drop it in the chat box if you would, and let me know what your background is, because that will help me know how deep I should go or how surface level we should keep it. Okay, so yeah, newly training. Okay, fantastic. Okay, I can go pretty deep here. All right, so when we're looking at the neurogenic iris, these are irides that tend to have fairly straight fibers, and they're often fairly densely packed. That's not always the case, but it is very common for them to be very densely packed. The more densely packed they are, so the more threads per square inch we see in a neurogenic eye, the more robust they are, the more resilience they have. If they have a very loose fiber structure, so lots of gaps between the fibers, but the fibers are still straight, then that is a deficient neurogenic. So, and I would never use those terms with a client, right? Who wants to be told they're deficient, right? Nobody. So I would never say that to them, but I would make that note that it's going to take a little more effort to get the results we're looking for here. Sometimes these people will often have a small pupil. If the pupil is larger, if you're working in not optimal lighting, then the pupil might be larger, and that might make the fibers appear a little bit wavy. Okay. So just keep those things in mind as you're looking at this. We say the fibers are straight, but take into account the pupil size as well. So the fiber layout usually tends to be fairly even, not really wobbly and mixed up, right? Fairly even here. We do, because things are usually so even here, we want to pay attention to areas where there might be a little more shading and a little more gapping between the fibers. That's going to give us some information, right? That's going to tell us where this person likely needs more support. Now, remember, we're only looking at the lay of the fibers here, really. We're not looking at, are there extra pigments? There won't be any significant amounts of lacunae in an iris like this, because that would take it away from being neurogenic and that would move it into another structural subtype. But certainly we might see pigments, and that doesn't have anything to do with it being neurogenic or not being neurogenic. Any iris type can have pigments. So when you understand your pigments, that will add to your iris analysis here. For now, we're just focusing on the structure that we're seeing here. Here's another really great iris photo where we're seeing fairly straight fibers, fairly evenly placed. You'll notice that at about 50 minutes, so at 10 o'clock, there's a little more shading, a little more gapping, right? And so when we look at our neurogenic type, these people do tend to be structurally strong. So it's not just that their eyes have got this density of fiber, but that reflects that their bodies tend to be structurally more robust and more resilient. These people often need physical activity, and they're often very active as children. As adults, they will tend to overdo things. They won't have good boundaries for themselves. They won't have those good limitations. And that can land them in trouble because they keep going and going and going. And when they think they need to keep going when they really should be resting, they will start to use stimulants. They'll get into the sugar or the caffeine or things like that to keep them going because they think they've got to do it all, right? So that's one of the things we need to work with on these people, is to help them understand the need for rest to allow the body to recharge. They do tend to be a little bit more prone to things like migraine headaches, right? These people, it's their nervous system that's going to be the weak link. So things like migraine headaches that involve spasms, spasmodic conditions like restless leg syndrome, and nerve conditions like shingles and multiple sclerosis, very common here. Their biggest risk areas tend to be their nervous system and their vascular system. So they tend to be a little more prone to things like stroke and migraine. When we're talking just about the nervous system, they're going to be a little more prone to things like adrenal fatigue, sleep issues, tension headaches, nervous dermatitis, nervous stomach, and nervous asthma. Notice how each of those things had the word nervous in front of it. They do tend to internalize their stress and let their stress kind of get the best of their chemistry and of their physiology. Another beautiful neurogenic eye. We've got a few fibers that are transversal here, but overall the fibers radiate out fairly evenly. These people tend to be emotionally sensitive, right? But they're not sensitive to their own needs, to their own bodies especially. So they're emotionally sensitive to other people, and they're emotionally sensitive towards themselves, as in you've got to be careful what you say and how you say it, because they're going to take things very personally, but they don't pay attention to what their bodies need. They love to be busy, and they don't pay attention to when they need to slow down. Right? So that is the hardest lesson we have to teach these people, is they need to slow down. Not only is it okay to take breaks, it is necessary to take breaks. These people are also very kinesthetic. They love soft things against their skin. They love gentle touches. Think of little children who love to have their heads rubbed, right? I think of a couple of my children. One of our boys, when he got married, his wife soon clued in that he would only wear soft clothing, and he can't be bothered to shop. He owns a couple of businesses, and he's pretty much a 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. kind of worker. And so when his wife buys him clothes, she brings them home, she launders them, she makes sure that they are soft and fluffy. He's always been like that. Even as a little boy, if the clothes were not soft and fluffy, he would not wear them. Right. We had one of our other boys who also has very neurogenic eyes, who would come up to me if I was at the stove cooking, and he would come up behind me and he would push his head under my arm, and he was wanting me to literally just rub his head. So like 8, 9, 10 years old, he just wanted to have his head rubbed. Right. And so he just very kinesthetic. They love touch. These are the boys who I couldn't hug them enough. Like if I could have strapped them to me when they were 12 years old, they probably still would have wanted to be there, right? They wanted the touch. So it's important then that these people get touched, right? That's how they express love. That's how they know they're loved, is by touch. Here's another lovely neurogenic iris. These people, again, for lifestyle, there's only 2 words they need to learn: slow down. Who do you know that has eyes like this? These neurogenic eyes is fairly even fiber, radiating out fairly straight, very well organized fiber. And they go, 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 go. Do you know anybody like that? Where they just don't know how to slow down. My son, who owns the businesses, he when he slows down, he really slows down. Like they try to get away for 2 1-week vacations a year where they just go somewhere where there's a beach. So he goes from 97 miles an hour to dead stop. And he takes that week to completely recharge, and then he's good to come back for another 5 or 6 months before they do it again. Right. And so that's good for him. That works well for him. But who do you know? Do you know someone? Let me know in the chat box. Do you know someone who has neurogenic eyes and where we are describing them fairly well here? Do you have trouble slowing them down? Making them stop to catch a breath, making them take time to rest, or encouraging them to rest? Sometimes what you need to do is keep them moving, but at a gentler pace, right? At a gentler pace. And so it would be if they're go, 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 maybe it's someone you know and love, maybe it's a spouse or, a partner or something like that. And you can just grab them and say, hey, let's just go for a walk. And not go for a power walk, just go for a stroll, right? Just a simple stroll. And that would be really good for them. Diet-wise, these people need to avoid consuming things that would deplete the nervous system. Now, what kinds of foods, I'm thinking specifically of foods or consumables here, do you know of that would deplete the nervous system? I'm going to wait while you type some answers in. Coffee, absolutely. Coffee depletes the nervous system. Good one, Vanessa. What else? What else do you know depletes the nervous system? I'm going to leave that one with you because that's something that in your training you should have learned how to do that. For those of you who have got iridology training, the rest of you can probably even think about things that you know that cost the nervous system some of its energy, right? So we need to focus on things that will build the nervous system. So what are some foods that build the nervous system? What can you think of? B vitamins can be helpful. Yeah, B vitamins can be helpful. Anything else? So B vitamins are more of a supplement. Can you think of a food that helps to build the nervous system? Nothing. Okay, that'll be a good little thing for you to research as well. To study up on the kinds of foods that will build and support the nervous system. It's important to know these things. When we're working with clients, it's one thing to be able to identify things in the eyes and to say, well, you have a predisposition towards this kind of a problem or that kind of a problem. But if you cannot give recommendations, like if you can't suggest dietary changes or herbal things or vitamins or lifestyle things that they can do to help support themselves, then what good is it to identify markings, right? So you're going to have to dig deep and do some research. These are things that I actually will teach in dynamic iridology. We teach about the diet. We teach about some herbal things, not that we're teaching a full nutrition course or a full herbal course, but I start teaching some of the seeds, some of the basic things that we need to know to do this well. So then supplements. Can you think of any herbs that might be supportive of the nervous system? What are some nervine herbs? What are some nervine herbs? Valerian is one, yeah. Be a little careful with that one. You don't want to use it on its own for too long. Any other herbs that you can think of that are good for the nervous system? Chamomile, yeah, chamomile can be good. Yeah. Skullcap, yeah. There's another good one, yeah. Excellent. Now you're starting to draw on what you know. This is good. This is very good. We need to make sure that we are recommending to our clients things that will help to support their nervous systems. And we need to be able to choose appropriately for the client, right? And Bessem is saying lion's mane. Yeah, lion's mane is good too. Many of the mushrooms are great for the nervous system and can really support it well. I understand, although I'm just starting to learn this, that lion's mane grows really well in my climate and in my area. So I'm going to be out looking for lion's mane this summer. So with this, we need to then be, when we're learning iridology and we're learning the constitutions, we need to be able to dovetail it with our knowledge of anatomy and physiology, and with whatever we know about nutrition, supplements, herbs, lifestyle, right? I liken doing iridology, and I'm going to come down a little bit hard here, right? Some iridology instructors simply teach markings. They only teach markings. They don't teach how the markings work together. They don't teach how to use the markings and the client's symptoms to create questions that you would want to ask the client to get deeper information. And they don't teach anything about how to put together herbal programs. And those are all things that I do in my course, because to me, only recognizing nuts and bolts, only recognizing markings is like taking your car to who you think is a mechanic, and the mechanic says, yeah, I know what's wrong with it, but I don't fix cars. I only identify the problem. If you want to get it fixed, you're going to have to take this report to Jim down the street. He knows how to fix them, right? He doesn't know how to do the assessment, but he knows how to fix them. And that's if you only can recognize markings, then that's going to be difficult, because you're only telling people what could be wrong with them, and you're not giving them anything that will help them to improve their health, right? So really important that whatever herbal or nutrition background you've got, that while you are learning iridology, that you practice integrating it with what you're learning, right? I think it's incorrect to learn iridology separately, especially if you've got all these other skills. And what I would want you to integrate what you already know with what you're learning with iridology. So that's just my perspective on it. This is one of my graduates, my certified graduates, Kimberly Zadalis. She says, I personally practice both Eastern and Western physiology medicine and was very impressed with the layout of the dynamic iridology program. I now use iridology in my clinical work and find it adds direction and clarity to every case. The layout of Judith's course makes it easy for her students to balance work, life, and study, and I really appreciate that. So again, just a reminder that the next dynamic iridology course will be starting on September 3rd, 2025. The course time will be 5 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. And if you want a little more information, you can grab that URL, which I should have put where I could grab it so I could paste it for you. Give me just a moment. I'm not the fastest keyboardist. Is that the word that we use these days in the world? Drop this into the chat box for you, so that if any of you are looking for an iridology course, you're going to find information there about what you could expect from dynamic iridology. So that was a very short mini class tonight. They're often longer than that. But with the neurogenic subtype, again, there are 4 structural subtypes. Neurogenic is only one of them. And when we know the 4 structural subtypes, it gives us an extra layer of information. We would start with the general constitution, the primary constitution. We would look at the subtypes by color, or the constitutional subtypes, and we would look at the structural subtypes. And those are the first 3 things we do when we do an iris assessment. Bessem, you raised your hand. you want to go ahead and drop something in the chat box for us? And if you raised your hand a few minutes ago, I'm sorry that I didn't see it earlier. Feel free to drop a comment in the chat box. You should be able to see it there, I would hope. And I hope I'm saying your name correctly to say it Bessem. So the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course is designed to prepare students to sit for the IPA certification exam. It includes all of level 1 and all of level 2 rolled into one 45 to 50 hour course. All right. So Bessem, I'm not thinking I'm seeing a message coming in from you. So hopefully we've answered whatever your question was, or you were able, maybe you were just doing that in response to saying lion's mane is a question mark. And so with that, we are actually, oh, and Mary Jane, we're just about done. It's a short one tonight. You're going to have to catch the replay. I'll make sure that goes out. It'll go out tomorrow morning. And so with that, my friends, any questions about the neurogenic subtype? Again, when we know the 4 structural constitutions, they add a layer of information for us. And it's always important information. And it's not complicated information, it's just another layer. Okay, so it doesn't look like there's any more questions coming in. So yeah, have a really great evening. We're gonna let you out of class early tonight. Have a great evening and we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.